Welcome to the Catholics Next Door with Greg and Jennifer Willits.
I have a hard time concentrating on the prayer when I'm holding someone's hand.
Pants are good.
Pants are always good. The set of 10 beads on the rosary, is it
a
decade or is it a decade? I was a living germ when I was a kid.
I'm Jennifer, the non-manicure deprived wife.
Half the audience is not going to be interested in what you have to say about manicures.
The veggies.
Veggies?
The veggies. Little vegetables are called veggies.
Yes.
Live from Atlanta, Georgia, here are your hosts, Greg and Jennifer.
Hey, welcome to the program. Glad to have you hanging out with us here on the third hour of the Catholics Next Door. Lots of fun going on in the program today. Still lots more fun ahead here on the program. My name is Greg Willits.
And I'm Jennifer Willits, his wife.
You know, it's kind of interesting this week. I'm very grateful this week. Yesterday we were talking about things that we're thankful for. I am thankful that we do not have children going to college this year.
Well, that day will come, but we're glad it's not right this moment.
I'm thankful that we're not having to pay for college tuition or move children into dorm rooms. Yesterday we talked about the whole thing about students starting college this fall and transitioning into dorm rooms, and we have a couple of nieces that are going through that right now, and seeing what my brothers or my sisters-in-law are talking about, the fact that these kids moving out of the house. It's just, I don't relish the idea of having to go through this in a first year. But I would also say that this is the first year where, as I am hearing about college students going off to school, especially some college students that I know, that I'm really feeling a lot older this year as I'm seeing these people going off to college. And maybe the realization that it has been 22 years since I went to college. Actually, it's been 22 years since I went to college. We left, we're out of high school. 22 years since we began college, and we're going to those first college classes. And I just look and say, how in the world has it been 22 years since we started college? And, I've felt older before. In certain situations, when someone says something, it's like, man, that makes me feel old. Or when anytime I talk to someone and say, yeah, I was born, after 1983. And I think 1983 is when Return of the Jedi came out in theaters. And you weren't born until after that came out. And yet it just makes me feel old. But this year, this current generation is so radically different from ours that I almost don't even know how to relate to them anymore. And I'm feeling old.
That's right. And in addition to how old they make us feel, because we still see them as little kids, and we already have ingrained in our minds that, well, if you're going to college, you have to be older to go to college. Oh my, you are old enough to go to college. Okay, so we have to come to grips with how that makes us feel, because we keep thinking we're the younger generation, that we have not really aged at all. But what's even more fascinating about these college students, these freshmen now starting their college careers, is how they are mentally starting college to begin with, the kind of life experience that they've had, and that's affecting their starting point of college, is radically different from when we started college and the experiences that we had that led us up to that moment. In fact, Beloit College has a list compiled with some very interesting information about the mindset of these college freshmen.
Now, this list, we're going to share with you some of these things. As I was reading through this list this morning is what made me feel old.
Right, because of the mindset of the freshmen today. When you hear this list, it might make you feel a little old.
But listen to these. Tell us, do these make you feel old? And what other things are you surprised about that the current generation of freshman college students, that they have no recollection of? Have you ever had a conversation with someone who's around the age of in college, and you mentioned some sort of maybe news-related thing or pop culture thing that was very significant to your generation, but then this young adult had no memory of this event, no idea of why this event was so important or how this event changed history. And that's kind of what this list, it's a compilation list that was released just yesterday. It's assembled each year by two officials at Beloit College, which is a private school of about 1,400 students in Beloit, Wisconsin. So the kind of information that's on this list, for example, here's one bit. For students entering into college this fall, for them, email is too slow of a way to communicate. And for them, phones have never had cords. And computers that they played with as kids are now in museums.
So you see, just knowing that fact about these freshmen today, that really is very telling about, their experience in life, what they come to the table with as far as how they're going to be a college student from this point forward. This is how they relate to history. I would think that a teacher would want to know this information because it would obviously affect the way that they would talk to their kids, because they have to know what are the significant pop culture references that the kids are actually going to know versus what the teacher has as a pop culture reference.
I want to put our New York crew on the spot because we got Adam, Jackie, and our intern Nick. Guys,
they're all in their 20s.
Yeah, they're all in their 20s, or I don't even know how old Nick is.
Or I think Nick is in his 20s.
Yeah, I don't think he is. I think he's a teenager. So
that's right.
He's like the demographic of what we're talking about here. So
perfect.
Let's see if we can ask you guys some questions. Adam, are you there, Adam? Adam,
yes.
we are producer. All right, Adam, how old are you? You're like 21. He hates it when I do this. You can hear the.
No,
you're like 27 or something like that.
27, yes.
27. All right. So 27. So you're 12 years younger than us. Mm-hmm. So do you remember? Mm-hmm. I mean, in your desk at work, you have a phone with a cord attached to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I thought that was a weird thing that they're pointing out, but that these kids don't remember phones with cords. Now,
I guess we're talking about at home, perhaps, where there's a lot of cordless phones going on, not a whole lot of the landlines, so to speak, actually corded. At home. At home, Adam, do you have all cordless phones at home? Did you grow up that way at home?
No, we actually had a rotary phone.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was genuinely going to ask you, have you ever used a rotary phone?
No. Ask Nick.
And,
all right.
No, and we always had a rotary phone, and we were like the last persons to go to like digital. So whenever we would call like a bank or something like that, or credit card just to whatever, and he had to do the touch tone thing, we could never do it because we'd have to like always dial 0 and go.
Yeah. See, I remember being at a friend's house and we were listening to the radio one time, and they were giving away something. They were doing some sort of giveaway contest. They said, "Call right now, be the 10th caller," and we're like 7, 4. Had to do the rotary dialing thing on his phone.
Now put Nick on the phone because I want to ask the same question to Nick. Put Nick on the phone. On the microphone.
On the microphone. All right. So, Nick, how old are you now?
I am 16.
16. So, our 16-year-old intern, Nick. Now, Nick.
Yes.
For you, do you relate to this? Is email too slow of a form of communication for you?
Yeah, well, you got to use texting now just because you get an answer right away. Not all phones do email, so the quickest way to get in touch.
Do you have any recollection of life before email? Do you have any memory of life before email?
No. I'm gonna say no about that, just because I've been using a computer since probably 98, since I was 5 years old. So
I mean, no memory. Okay, so how about do you know what a rotary film is?
Rotary
phone is.
I actually do. One of my friends owns one, and he has it up in his kitchen. So I have used one before.
So it's more like a retro design.
Yes.
aspect. So that's the only way that. And you've used it before.
Yes.
Were you giggling when you used it?
Yes, I was very excited.
This is crazy that they used to do this.
Oh, wow. You guys are so primitive.
This is people that grew up. All right, let me ask you this.
Yes.
Clint Eastwood. Do you know who Clint Eastwood is?
I just know him from that movie he recently made.
Okay.
As a director.
As a director.
As a director.
Now, the class of 2014, the class that's going in right now into college, they think of him more as a sensitive director. Do you know who Dirty Harry is?
I do not.
Wow.
I know he had that famous line, like the punk line or whatever.
Okay, so you've heard of that at least.
Yes.
Clint Eastwood as Dirty Harry said, "Go ahead, make my day." Or are you feeling lucky, punk? Are you? Okay, so you've heard that line then.
Yes, I've heard the line.
All right, let me ask you this then, Nick. And we're speaking with Nick, our 16-year-old intern in our studio in New York. All right, do you, Nick, know how to write in cursive?
I
What?
I do. When
Adam.
when I had to take an entrance exam to get into my high school, they required me to learn cursive again. I hadn't learned it since like second grade, so now it's stuck with me, and that's how I actually write. I write a little bit of script and a little bit of regular text.
Okay.
Okay, so do you do your own thing? Because I'm dealing with this with my kids now. They just want to do print. If they're going to handwrite anything, it's print that they go to first. Cursive is like, well, who would ever write in cursive? So you kind of, if you have to handwrite anything, do you tend to rely on print or cursive? Which is what makes sense to you now?
Handwriting, well, if I want to go quicker, I use a little bit of both. But if I'm using regular writing, I use print just because my script isn't very legible.
Very,
okay.
very interesting.
All right, one more. Well, no, not one more. This is kind of fun, Nick. We're going to keep putting you on the spot. Speaking of our 16-year-old intern, Nick. All right.
Let's see if he knows any of these people in history.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Nick, do you wear a wristwatch?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Not all the time.
One of the things, according to this Beloit college mindset list, this list of the kind of the mindset of these 1,400 students at this university in Beloit, Wisconsin, of their freshman class, a lot of these kind of cultural things people are not familiar with. And they say that a lot of these kids have never worn a wristwatch, or they don't know how to write in cursive either, that kind of thing. Okay, so here's this list, Nick, and it's meant to remind teachers that cultural references that are familiar to them might draw some blank stares from college freshmen who are mostly born in 1992. So if you're 16, so you were born in 1994, weren't you?
93.
93, okay.
So 2 years before when we got married, he was 2. Jennifer, just to put it in perspective, Nick was wearing diapers on the day we got married, Jennifer.
He was.
Wow.
Could have been our ring bearer.
Does when you listen to our program and you're sitting in the studio in New York, do you just sort of like shake your head or look around and go,
blank stares?
I have no idea what these people are talking about.
No, I get a lot of the references you guys make.
All right. Let me throw some questions out at you, or some personalities. Do you know who Dr. Jack Kevorkian is?
Well, I've heard the name. I feel like he would be a bad guy on a TV show.
Sounds evil.
What about, do you know who Dan Quayle is?
Was he like a governor or senator?
So you know he's somehow related to politics.
Okay. Yes.
All right. Okay, that's pretty good.
How about Rodney King? Do you know who Rodney King is?
I know the name, and I know he was in the news a lot back in the 90s, right?
Something significant about Rodney
something
King.
significant.
Well, here's your quick pop culture history lesson. Dr. Jack Kevorkian.
Yes.
He's known as the suicide doctor. He helped a lot of people basically kill themselves.
Euthanasia.
Yeah, through euthanasia. Yeah. Dan Quayle. He was the vice president of the United States,
okay.
along with the first George Bush.
He's the one who had spelling problems.
Governor, vice president. Yeah, it's close enough. And Rodney King, he was the responsible for. He got beat by several police officers back in the early '90s, and in 1992, and that spring, those police officers were freed from their charges, and there was a big riot in Los Angeles, and a lot of people were hurt and some people were killed. So it's just amazing talking. All right, Nick, thank you for that.
Thank you for that.
I want to put Jackie, our sound engineer, on the line now, because Jackie, you're
how
around,
old are you, Jackie?
You're,
We've got to establish
you're 26, 27 as well, aren't you, Jackie?
Okay, hello. I'm
sorry.
Jackie.
How old are you, Jackie?
I'm 26.
26.
Okay, gotta be. So are you sure?
So you have 10 years up on Nick. Now,
yeah.
In all honesty, did you know who Dr. Jack Kevorkian is?
I do, yes. I know.
Okay, Dan Quayle.
I know who Dan Quayle is.
Okay, and Rodney King.
Rodney King, I know him.
All right, so you were like 9 years old when that event happened.
Really?
With the Los Angeles riots.
Okay.
Because that was 18 years ago now when that happened last.
Don't remind me.
18 years ago. Now, are you, so there's like, you're 20, what did you
26.
say?
I'm going to be 27.
All right, so there's 13, 14 years difference between you and us.
Yes.
And then there's 10 years difference between you and Nick.
Yes.
You're in the middle here. Are you surprised by Nick's mindset and the things that he doesn't remember, or what he does or does not know? And are you surprised by the weird things that we throw out? And do you ever say, I have no idea what they're saying?
Okay, I'm closer with you guys on things that you say as opposed to Nick, because it's just weird, like altogether. Because he's, I don't know, like what did we bring up, Adam? We brought up like the World Trade Center for some reason. And Nick
that
was
happened happened in 92 or 93.
Yeah, well, he was like, I really don't remember what they look like. Because how old were you?
Oh, you're talking
he
about
was
from
in
9/11.
third grade, yeah.
You're not even talking about the first thing back in the 90s. You're talking about
9/11, yeah. And he was in third grade. Explosion. I was in my first year of college.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
But see, that's very telling, because I think that a teacher, for a college freshman, that they should take the time to know what these kids actually have in their heads, what kind of information is pop culturally in there, like that were helping to shape their personality. Like Beavis and Butthead, that means something to Greg and me because we were around for that entire rollout.
Nick, do you know who Beavis and Butthead are?
Yes, I do, on MTV.
Okay, so how do you know that? Because what year were you born?
93.
So Beavis and Butthead, they had already been on TV for like a year or two before you were even born. Yeah. How do you know who they are?
Just from, classic, just seeing it on
classic.
TV. Classic.
The golden oldies.
Classic.
He pulled out the reel, dusted it off.
It's a classic. Oh my goodness. See, that's why I'm feeling old this week. As I'm reading stuff like this, and the fact that stuff like that is considered to be a
He pulled it off the shelf right next to I Love Lucy and the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Exactly. Wasn't that like the first color cartoon that there ever was?
Right.
Isn't that where that came from? Oh my goodness! Does this make you feel old as well? 888-322-8465, 888-3 Catholic, talking about Beloit College's mindset list. It was just released yesterday. They've been doing this for about 14 years now from these two officials at this private university. I mean, just they talk about what is the mindset of the student, the freshman student entering into college right now. What are the things that they're familiar with? Because if you're in class as a teacher and you throw out a reference to Rodney King, they may have no idea who you're talking about. Or if you say, well, Dan Quayle, and we all know about him, and they're like, yeah, wasn't he a governor or something? You got to have that mindset.
They're going to miss all the little jokes, the behind-the-scene text.
Just to put this in perspective, I mean, our intern,
who's 16.
He's 16. And he doesn't, Nick, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm ragging on you. I mean,
no,
you're 16.
This is great. This is
all
great.
Right. So, it's 2010. So it's coming up on 22 years since I voted for the first time in a presidential election.
He has yet to vote.
I voted for Dan Quayle. I mean, I didn't vote for him, but,
Yeah.
I went and voted with my dad that day. I'm like, who should I vote for, Dad? And Dad's like, all right, you're going to vote for Bush. Well, okay. That's how I understood it. Humberto calling in from El Paso, Texas. Welcome to the program, sir.
Hi there.
So
I'd like to relate a story. Go ahead.
Yeah, are you feeling old right now, hearing all this this kind of discrepancies in the mindset, the age gap?
I feel amazed. I mean, I don't feel old, but amazed. I want to relate a couple of stories. I have a 16-year-old daughter. I have 3 daughters. But anyways, my 16-year-old daughter a few years ago comes up to me and she says, Dad, what's a rotary phone? And I said, you never seen one? And she goes, Dad, I don't know what it is. Never mind if I've seen one. Maybe I've seen one, but I don't know what it is. What is it? I couldn't believe she had never seen or heard of a rotary phone. She had no idea what it was.
But once you think about it, you can understand why. I mean, it's like, well,
yeah,
now that I guess you're right. You have never seen one. What else have you discovered?
Well, anyway, a couple weeks after that, I went to visit my mom. My mom lives in Chihuahua, Mexico. She has a very large home. She's 88 years old. And she has this study that my girls like to go into because it's like a little, it's an office full of old stuff. And anyway, she calls me and she goes, Dad, I'm talking to my mom. And she goes, Dad, come over. And I said, what's going on? I'm talking to your mom. I'm your grandma. I'm busy. She says, well, I discovered this really neat thing. And I said, well, what is it? Well, I don't know, but come see it. It's awesome. And I said, what does it look like? Well, it's kind of like a computer, but without a screen. It was a typewriter. She had never seen a typewriter.
If I push this button, this arm comes up and whacks a letter on a piece of paper.
She thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yes, it is. And doesn't it make you almost want one just for nostalgia reasons alone?
I know, exactly.
I used to have like an old classic, like an old-fashioned typewriter, like the kind of Hemingway used to use. I used to have one as a decoration in my room.
Oh,
well, that's what my mother has. She doesn't use it anymore, but that's what she typed on for decades.
Oh, that is classic. That is awesome stuff. Thanks for calling in
That'll
and
make you
sharing
feel
that
old.
today.
Yeah, very much, Umberto. Appreciate it. What kind of things have you had these kind of situations or stories happen to you? What makes you feel old? 888-322-8465, 888-3 Catholic here on the Catholics Next Door with Greg and Jennifer Willits.
I seriously would love to get my hands on an old-fashioned typewriter and just leave it out there for the kids to explore and discover. I mean, what better way to really teach them the evolution of communication on the written word? And at one point, this was it. This was the only way we could type words, was in this primitive format of a typewriter. I guarantee you, Nick, our intern, probably hasn't seen one or touched one. Now, I could be wrong, but man, a typewriter, if you have, speak up now.
Now, I want to keep talking about this because this is kind of fun talking about how old we are. But I don't even feel that old. But here we're talking about things like Beavis and Butthead is a classic. It's only 18 years old. How can it be a classic?
In 20 years, it could be in some kind of Hall of Fame somewhere.
The fact that college students now entering into college as freshmen, they have no recollection of Dr. Jack Kevorkian or Dan Quayle or Rodney King.
Or it's very fuzzy on their radar, if it's on their radar at all. They might have heard the name, but I don't really know. It sounds familiar, and that's as much as it is.
Well, we want to share with you a little bit more from this mindset list that was passed out from Beloit College, and also take more of your calls about times where you felt a little old when either something you said fell on deaf ears of a young adult who had no clue what you were talking about, or when a young adult said something and acted like it was like Beavis and Butthead is being something that's a classic. Has this ever happened to you? 888-3-CATHOLIC, 888-322-8465. We're going to give you more results of this mindset list and take more of your calls when we return on the Catholic Channel, Sirius 159.
And XM 117.
Sit back, relax, and listen to The Catholics Next Door with Greg and Jennifer Willits on the Catholic Channel, Sirius 159 and XM 117.
Hey, glad to have you with us here on the Catholics Next Door. We've been talking about the Beloit College Mindset List. It was released yesterday. It's this list that Beloit College compiles. It's kind of interesting. It's to look inside the mindset of today's batch of college freshmen. And this compilation is assembled each year by two officials at this private school of about 1,400 students in Beloit, Wisconsin. Now, what's kind of interesting is it has things on here such as the fact that the current batch of freshmen going into school
this fall
right now, that, for example, Dr. Kevorkian, the suicide doctor, he has never, in their lifetime, he has never been licensed to practice medicine. Or here's another one.
Or if they even know his name.
Yeah. Now, we got Nick, our intern. He's 16 years old, working here on the program in New York this summer. Nick, I want to ask you a couple more of these because I found this very fascinating, just to show the huge difference and a generational gap here. Nick, do you know who John McEnroe is?
No.
Wow.
See?
Yeah.
John McEnroe. He was once a professional tennis player with a very heated temper. I mean, that just kind of puts things in perspective.
He was
there.
well known for his hot temper,
Yeah.
and he's a lot of TV commercials. He was parodied a lot.
Now, here's one, Jennifer, that will show different answers here, okay?
Okay.
All right. Nick, you're
Yes.
16. Jennifer, you're 40.
Yes.
Older than me.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Because I'm only 39. All right. Nick, who is Fergie?
Fergie. That's the singer from the Black Eyed Peas.
Okay. Did you? Now, Jennifer, you're laughing. Yeah. Jennifer, who's Fergie?
Fergie, gosh, she's red hair. She's part of the English royalty line.
Exactly.
Princess Di and all.
Exactly.
Fergie.
Exactly. Yeah. Did you know that, Nick?
Just because I looked at the list, it said princess. So.
Yeah, Fergie was
no idea though.
Fergie was married to Prince Charles's little brother.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And I didn't know about that pop singer until I kept reading Fergie and Fergie's big hit. I'm like, going, really?
She got into music.
Yeah, I'm like, Fergie's a pop star now. That's kind of weird. I just always
thought old.
I always thought she just did Jenny Craig commercials. I just thought I didn't know she was doing pop music, and why would they care? Because she's Fergie. She's anyway. Well, that's kind of funny. Well, Larry's calling in from Fargo, North Dakota. Hey, Larry, welcome to the program.
Hey guys, how you doing?
We're doing all right.
Excellent.
Are you feeling old as we're having this discussion, Larry?
You know, I was telling your screener that I think it's just our age, Greg. I mean, I can't speak for Jennifer because she's a lot older than we are.
Yeah.
But as a 39-year-old like myself, you know, I find myself doing the same thing that you used to despise when you were a kid and listening to Grandpa tell the stories. Oh, when I was a kid.
Yes.
You know, you just, I mean, it's just the age that we are, that we've been in the workforce long enough, or we've been adults long enough now, that some of the kids, really, and I mean, no offense to your young intern or anything like that, but some of the people that we would consider kids are now old enough to be fairly successful at their jobs. You know, I've been in the service industry my entire working career. I remember pagers, voice pagers.
Oh, see, that's a good question right there. I could ask,
and
pagers.
I
haven't had
having
a pager.
to look things up in books instead of just Googling things. You had to look them up in books.
Yeah, we remember life before Google was a verb. Did you Google
Exactly.
Now,
If
when
you
did
didn't
Google
spell
come
it
into
right,
the
you
scene?
couldn't find it.
And it did make you think, how did we do so much reference, and how did we obtain information in the past? It's almost hard to remember life like that from our perspective, especially here in the United States. And I know that there are other countries who don't have that immediate access to that level of internet and technology. So for them, it's still their reality. But from
Jennifer, when you had the librarian, when you would ask, how would you spell this? They'd say, look it up. And you'd look at them and go, how am I supposed to look it up if I don't know how to spell it?
Right.
Or now you can misspell words on Google and they'll still find it. Did you mean? And they'll throw the
that's
suggestion out
a
there.
good point. And it makes you wonder, how well can kids spell on their own now? Because I see it in my kids, and boy howdy, they make a lot of mistakes. It's almost as if they just don't understand how to spell. They want to write phonetically almost, rather than the way it's really supposed to be. But again, that's another tangent we don't need to go. I think it's utterly hilarious that we are now at an age where we are saying, when I was your age, we're old enough to say that now, because kids just have a whole different experience. But I think it's important that we as parents stay on top of what their experience is so that we can always relate to them.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate the call today here on the Catholics Next Door, talking about the Beloit College's mindset list. All these different, for example, today's college freshmen going into their mindset, to them, Czechoslovakia has never existed.
Wow. Yeah, I could see that.
Czechoslovakia, to them, it's never existed.
What
That's
is
just amazing.
Czechoslovakia?
Cindy calling in from Michigan. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, guys. How are you?
We're
Wonderful.
feeling old, but we're good.
I have a good one for you. And this happened a couple of years ago, but it was funny. I used to have a big, an old pickup truck. You know, it had only power steering. That was all it. It was, manual everything. And I went and picked my daughter up from school, and just so happened her friend was coming home from school with us for the first time. And they're sitting in the back seat, and she turns to me and she says, "Miss Cindy, how do you roll the window down?" Because it had handles.
Oh, the crank style.
Yeah, it
turn
was a
the
crank. It wasn't automatic windows.
So she's looking for
had
a button.
no clue. Yeah, she had no clue how the window went down. She wanted to open the window because we didn't have air. Of course, it didn't have anything. It was just a farm truck, and had no clue. I'm like, oh, you got to twist the handle, and we were laughing. We were like, oh my goodness.
That is very, very true. You think about how the evolution of cars and how kids are it's the norm for them to have all these high-tech button features that are almost standard now in the cars that are coming out, that it's very difficult for them to relate to, or to think how to do anything manually like it was in our time.
My friends and I, we laugh about it because it used to be when somebody borrowed your car, when we were kids, you had to give them a 10-minute explanation as to how to start it, in case, okay, we'll pump it 3 times, and then
I remember
or fuel injection, and he said, okay, well, it was this quirky or that was quirky, or, or spray some starter fluid, in the engine, in the
You have to push the brake
whatever.
halfway down and then start it up, and then it will crank up,
Exactly.
That's
you
great.
have to give an explanation, and not this year, nowadays.
Yeah,
no,
now there's cars
the
where you
car
say, now you put your finger on that button and the car will start.
You just
some
think
cars.
it, and it'll start. Thanks for the call, Cindy. That's pretty funny stuff.
That's how
Thank
it'll
you
be
for that.
if Google ever has cars that they manufacture. It'll know that you're going to want to go someplace, so the car will already be started before you go outside the door. That's how Google's going to do it.
where we're going.
Debbie calling in from Idaho. Hi, Debbie. Welcome to Reminiscing Day here on the Catholics Next Door.
Well, yeah, you see, I enjoy y'all show so much. Thanks for letting me be a part of it today. But if you think you kids are old, I just turned 60.
Okay, so you've got other experiences that even Greg and I might not remember or relate to. Care to quiz us?
And actually, yeah, what we were talking about, my husband and I, the other day, is his daddy is actually turned 100 this year.
Wow.
And it was, we sat there and we started thinking about all the things that he had experienced in his lifetime for that 100 years.
That's amazing.
And it just boggles your mind. You go, wow, that is absolutely amazing that he could have seen all these things in his lifetime and experienced all that. World War I, World War II, man walking on the moon, just like typewriters. It's just amazing.
It does.
It's really, and if you show children, I come from the South. I'm from Louisiana originally, and if you show people the old children the artifacts where they used to write script, and it was so beautiful, they have no idea. They think they did that with some sort of a computer program.
I know, it almost seems like how can it possibly be done by hand, so to speak. But it is funny that, I think it's wonderful if you have an opportunity to speak with an elderly person who has lived through so much of the evolution of our technology. It is amazing. It must be amazing from their point of view to see it all happen in their lifetime. And I think there's much value in going back and remembering these things.
Yeah, and Jennifer, I think as parents, you can understand this with your children. You spend so much time with them. Because my husband and I also were talking about, he wished he had sat down and talked to his grandparents, and was able to pick from them all the things that they experienced, and his father. You know, now we're older, wished we'd done that, but we didn't because, God, that was boring. But maybe as parents, we really do pass down history to our children, and that's where we're failing as parents. I think that we're not sharing those experiences because the children we think aren't interested, and I don't think it's that they're not interested. They don't know.
Yeah,
Good point.
I think you're absolutely right, Debbie. I think
Great point.
And that's something for us to keep in mind, and that's part of the reason. Thank you for the call. Part of the mindset list from Beloit College, the list that they put together for teachers in particular, from these two officials, they compiled this list at this private school, about 1,400 students, so that this mindset, this to remind teachers basically of the cultural references that are familiar to them, might draw some blank stares from college freshmen who are born mostly around 1992. And of course, this also has the unintended consequence of making people feel old when you start having discussions about these things and talking about the things that the current college freshmen have no memory of right now. Now, this list in particular, though, I mean, some of the other interesting things on here, looking at the list, and you can see the full list over on the website at beloit.edu/mindset. They had the full list of things from this year's mindset listing. It's BELOIT, beloit.edu/mindset.
Now, one thing that I think is wonderful about this Beloit mindset list that lets us know what the college freshman's experience typically is when they start college, the kinds of things they've seen in the news, their pop culture, how their brains have been formed in their first 18 years of life. I think this is valuable information not only for the teenagers, but really for parents. I think it's very easy for a parent to lose sight of what their child's experience is. Now, Greg and I try to stay on top of it and to just stop for a moment and realize, wow, our 18-month-old daughter won't remember life before iPad, before iPhone. All of those things have always been in her existence. This is how her life experience will be shaped. She will see these things and always think, this is normal. Nothing was before this. This is how it all starts. I think it's fascinating to just stop and try to put yourself as the parent into the child's shoes to see what their world has been like. Because if anything, it helps to keep you in a position to be relatable to the child, which is one of the points of this Beloit College mindset list, is to help the teachers to always remain relatable to their students so they can have engaging lectures that the students go, yes, this teacher gets me, understands what I've been through, understands the current pop culture trends of which are significant in my life, and I guarantee that class will probably be more successful. Again, if you want to read all of the bullet points on this Beloit College mindset list, you can go online over to beloit.edu/mindset, and you don't only have to read the list for the upcoming freshman class of the year of 2014. This website gives you the option of changing the year of the student so you can go back and see what the pop culture references were like for that child at any given year. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and according to Ron Neef and the other English professor, Tom McBride, they're the two people at Beloit College who assembled this list. It says that it has given them very, somewhat of an unusual perspective on cultural shifts as well. So it's not just to help them in terms of looking at the new freshmen coming into the colleges, but to also, in a way, it's a strange way of looking at our modern day history. I mean, the truth is things are going to change in our lifetimes. And I think about our own children. And just recently I was sitting on the bed with our daughter Lily. She's 18 months old. And we were, sitting there and playing around with my iPad. And she already knows how to press the buttons. And she knows how to make different programs open up. And she recognizes different icons and knows how to make them do different things. And I'm just thinking, she is growing up that she will never have any memory of life before touch-sensitive devices like this.
That's true.
And that's just kind of an unusual thing, but it shows a cultural shift. And this is something that was kind of interesting. On this list from Beloit College, we mentioned Beavis and Butthead earlier, okay? So this is old MTV cartoon that was on TV early 90s. Now, if you're of our age, you remember that at that time, a lot of parents and teachers feared that Beavis and Butthead would be the voice of this lost generation.
That it would be so influential on the way that they would talk, the way that they would behave, that it would be the ultimate terrible role model for any child to witness because of how graunchy Beavis and Butthead was on their cartoon back on early 90s from MTV.
Yeah. Now the fact that the name was Butthead, I mean that in and of itself was pretty pushing the edge. Now the Associated Press, in their article about this Beloit College mindset list, one thing they said I thought was kind of interesting, because they point out how when Beavis and Butthead came about, that parents and teachers feared that Beavis and Butthead might be the voice of a lost generation. But then they say, with far edgier content available today, such as South Park or online videos that push the envelope, they say there's something quaint about recalling the hand-wringing that the MTV cartoon prompted. But in a way, what they say is, this quote really bothered me. This is from the folks who compiled this list. These two professors, the Ron Neef and then Tom McBride at Beloit College. They say, I think we do that with every generation. We look back and say, what were we getting so upset about? A, kids outgrow it, and B, in retrospect, we realized it really wasn't that bad. And I don't know if I agree with this statement. Because, we're talking a lot about the things that we remember and the way things are now, but then we're looking at something different. Now they're saying that some of the things that we're kind of wringing our hands about right now, we see a movie that is just a bad movie that we don't want our kids seeing, that they're trying to almost rationalize or relativize this by saying, in 20 years we're going to look back and say it's not that big of a deal. Well, why would we do that? Why, if now...
Because our morals would have been loosened?
Exactly. if now we look back and say, Beavis and Butthead, it wasn't that bad. Well,
it's harmless.
It's
really?
because our society became acclimated to that kind of thing, and now we've kicked it up to the next level. And so
That's what you have to be watchful for.
It does. That bothers me now. I don't agree with this. The way I look at it is that Beavis and Butthead, and I hate to say this because it sounds like we're trying to make a philosophical point using Beavis and Butthead as an example.
But we are. No, I'm just kidding.
But we are, because that's what we do on the Catholics Next Door. Beavis and Butthead, in a way, they're like grandfathers to South Park. And someday, South Park is going to seem, as these two people said, that almost quaint, looking back at the raunchiness of South Park. And it's going to be the grandfather to something even worse. The thing about these kind of programs and the kind of things that we're seeing, and now they seem like classics, is that they set precedents. The culture seems to kind of keep trying to one-up in a way. It's like, well, Beavis and Butthead was the thing back in the early 90s. What's going to be next?
Some other things that you can find on this mindset list put out by Beloit College that just gives you a little bit of a hint as to what is normal for a freshman going into college today. For an example, Beethoven has always been a dog.
Yeah, those Beethoven movies, for a lot of them, they're just...
That's how they grew up.
But they have to know that it's classical music as well.
Surely.
Dun, 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 dun. I mean, everyone knows.
Well, we assume, but perhaps there are just some who always say, no, Beethoven is... To them, it's a dog first, and then maybe at some point they'll learn, oh, you mean the dog was named after this famous composer? But they're going to be introduced to Beethoven first as an animal. Not as the musician.
George calling into the program from Baltimore, Maryland. Hi, George. You're on the Catholics Next Door.
Hey, guys. How are we doing today?
We're doing wonderfully well. Hope you're doing the same, George.
Good, good. Hey, I got schooled a little bit myself talking about getting old. I was watching a show on TV about the Cuban Missile Crisis. And my mom and dad were still up here on Sunday, and we were talking about the mindset of the country during that time. I bet a lot of them don't remember that one.
Well,
True.
I mean, and the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, I think it happened like 7 years before we were born. But
right.
But even then,
we learned about it in history in school.
And I don't know, is it because we grew up? Oh, that's another thing right there. George, how old are you, George?
I'm 53.
Okay, 53. So you remember this as well. You got a few years up on us, but it's still something that was probably pretty prominent in your life.
Yeah,
but,
I was only 7. I was only 7 years old.
Yeah. Well, growing up in the 80s, though, and just living in the 80s, we lived in a lot of fear that we were going to get hit with nuclear weapons. I mean, it was
absolutely.
We believed the Russians could launch nuclear weapons any day. And the current generation, they have no memory of that.
It's funny. Imagine if we had some of that technology now where Kennedy and Khrushchev could have texted each other back and forth, how quickly that thing could have either escalated or ended.
I don't know. See, then they may have forgotten to put a period in their text message, and
then the whole tone was
and
lost.
Khrushchev would have said, "Oh, Paul, that Ronnie, he's so angry at me." So it's like
laugh out loud.
Yeah. You think their username would have been like Prez USA and Vodka Are Us or something like that? Would have been their text messaging names.
What's really funny is I still have one of the original computers from Radio Shack. Don't ask me why.
It was the TRS-80.
Yeah, we used to have to use a cassette to load the I guess you call it software back then. I don't know what they called it.
Yeah, you go to play like Robotron or something like that. You put in the cassette tape, and you hit play, and then the computer would have to read it. You could go back and play the game about 45 minutes after it read it from the cassette tape.
Well, I've got a couple of nieces that are, one's in her 30s and the other one's in her 20s, and I showed them that thing and said, okay, have a good time. And they were pulling their hair out with that thing.
Yep,
I was laughing.
When we were kids, that's the way it was. It was the old tape deck in the computer, and we liked it. We liked it. George, thanks for the call, man. Appreciate hearing from you on the program. Diego calling in from South Bend, Indiana. Hey, Diego.
How's it going?
Well,
Wonderful.
Feeling old, Diego.
This
feeling
is
old.
Fun going down memory lane.
You know what makes me feel old? When people younger than me say they feel old.
Yeah.
I know. I get it.
Yeah, okay, see?
That's fair.
Yeah, and we hear that also. It's like, well, you guys are only 39 and 40. What are you talking about feeling old?
All right. The reason I called, you guys were mentioning this mindset thing. I remember back probably 10 years ago, they had this 1800 house on PBS.
Yeah.
Where they had to live back in the 1800s. We could actually do a 1970s house, and people would not know how to do.
They'd have to have that soundtrack.
Take someone who was around 20 years old and see if they could survive in the 1970s.
No, I mean,
young adults.
It just you wouldn't have. Let's see. What would you have then? You wouldn't have the computer. You wouldn't have a cell phone. You wouldn't have.
Well, would it be rotary phones as the only phone in the 1970s? Push button. Was push button
There
around?
were push button phones in the 70s.
No, the Princess didn't come out until '82.
No, I know we had a little Bell South because we carried this thing around with us for like 25 years. Because the old phones could.
Oh wait a minute. Now you're saying Bell South.
All right, not Bell South. The Mama Bell phone network, whatever it was called back in the 70s.
Mama Bell.
It was. And then there were all
What
these
was
baby
it called?
and then all the baby bells. It was because we had like Ohio Bell in Ohio, and then we had Southern. It was right
just
when they
bell.
were all split up.
Some kind of bell. Can't even remember that. That's really before my time.
All right, Diego. When are you saying that the push button phones came about?
I think '82 is when the Princess actually came out with the push buttons.
Wow. And again, I remember.
Okay, there were push buttons, but it actually made clicks.
Okay, but it sounded like rotary. Even when you push the button, it still gave you the rotary click sound. It wasn't touch tone, which might have been something different.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Anyway, but going back to the 1970s, even then to now, just a mere 40 years later, there's still tremendous differences just within a 40-year period of time.
You would have 3 network TV shows.
Yeah. 3 networks.
The evolution of a television set, another.
Yeah. Well, that's another good thing right there, or good example. I remember when I was a kid, I was born in Atlanta, and in Atlanta we had a lot of UHF channels. We had the 3 networks. We had PBS, and we had a bunch of UHF channels. We had Channel 17, which is now TBS, the Superstation, cable network. But it was a local channel in Atlanta, was TBS. Then we moved to Ohio, and we just went down to the 3 networks and PBS. And I thought, wait a minute, where's all the reruns from sitcoms and the cartoons that we had back on those?
Very, very different.
Now it's cables everywhere. Diego, thank you for the call today here on the Catholics Next Door. Julie calling in from Colorado Springs, Colorado. Hi, Julie.
Hi. I just was thinking about this. I'm driving back from Wyoming for my daughters, and I was listening to your radio, and I'm a teacher, and in 1996 or 97, I taught a 4-5 class, and we had this energy thing where it was an old film strip, but they showed the film strip, and they showed the different things that were made out of oil, and one of them was like a 33 record. And so the kids were saying, they'd show different things, and they'd say, what is this? And the kids would answer. They got to the record, and they said, what is this? And the kids said, in unison, giant CD. And I just thought, oh, my gosh.
See?
So the next day, I have an old record. I had some old records, and one of them was the old 1963 Von Meter of John F. Kennedy and the First Family. And I brought that in to show them, and I got an old record player, put it on, and those kids laid on the floor on their stomachs and watched that record player go around and around and around.
And it was mesmerizing about it.
Yeah. But when they said giant CD, I thought, whoa, these kids don't. And this was like almost 15 years ago. That these kids should know what a record is, but they didn't. There was like one that had seen one at his grandma's house, but I've enjoyed your program this morning because I'm 57, and I'm thinking the guy that just said what makes me feel old is people who are younger than me saying they feel old. I thought, yep,
I can understand.
I agree there. Yep.
I can completely understand. Julie, thank you for sharing that with us today.
Yeah,
that
thank you
is
so much.
very true. Think about just the evolution of things like vinyl and record players. And, I wonder, for someone in their 20s, and again, if maybe Adam or Jackie can grab the mic, I want to know, do you remember TVs when it was a dial to change the channel? You actually had to get up, walk to the television to twist the dial to get to the number station that you wanted to access? Or has it always been remote controls for you? Adam or Jackie?
Well,
if you're around.
They've taken off.
Well, I guess they're,
They're busy with
I
other
don't
stuff.
know. Yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry, what's that?
Oh, there you go.
He's doing his job in the studio,
Thank
Jennifer.
you.
You throw him on the loop like that.
I just was curious about your television watching experiences growing up. Since you're in your 20s, your mid-20s, do you remember televisions that only had a dial to twist in order to access a different station?
Yes, I had that.
Now, is that because it was your parents who
Yep.
had it before you were born, and so it just stayed in the house?
Yeah, we had two actually, one in like a common area and one in like one of the bedrooms. Yeah.
Okay, very good. So that isn't completely lost upon you.
No, it's not.
And do they still have it?
No,
Okay.
they don't.
I was just wondering. Yeah, they do.
My grandparents,
you don't even have
yes.
remote controls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how they stay in such good shape. They actually get out of their couch to go across the room to change the channel.
Very good.
Well, it's been an interesting trip down memory lane. Plenty more still ahead here on The Catholics Next Door. You're hanging out with Greg and Jennifer Willits on the Catholic Channel, Sirius 159.
And XM 117.